Hello everyone, Teresa Van Leeshout here again in sunny South Australia. And this speech I'm giving is part 2 of chapter 6 of my excellent book. Part 2 because the first video went for an hour and 35 minutes and I didn't get through. This is the largest chapter in my book. Chapter 6, Gender, Ideology, Transgenderism, Politically Legislated and Funded Eugenics Depopulation Program World. So I'm on my tour, just to remind everyone, I'm on my tour promoting my excellent book, but also my public campaign for Australians to vote for the Governor-General's job from a list of candidates for this federal election year 2025. Obviously, I want that job and I want to be on the list for many, many, many reasons. If you want to help with that campaign, what you can do is you can email the federal and state politicians, some of them, and like Anthony Albanese and Peter Dutton, which prove that they're just politicians under this textbook here, which I used as a teacher, a high school teacher, that the position of Prime Minister is not in the Australian Constitution, and that Australia is supposed to be governed by the Governor-General and the Federal Executive Council under Section 61 to 70 of the Constitution. And it should have been like that from the start. It should have also been that the politicians would, the people, the public, would vote for the Governor-General's job, which should have been from the start as well. So if you want to help with this campaign, you can email them, just their electoral office, or any other federal and state politicians, and say, we want to be able to, just a very short, quick email or a phone call even, and say we want to be able to vote for the Governor-General's job from a list of candidates, and we want Teresa Van Leeshout on that list, and we want you to, make Teresa Van Leeshout the Governor-General. So my campaign is Make Me the GG. Also, you can do that as flick a quick email, bulk email to them, which takes literally 5 minutes. That's how you can help promote this campaign as well. All right, so I said in my other speech, last one, that I will talk a bit about the economy before I talk about, give the speech about the topic that I'm talking about. And just briefly, my views about the economy, what I want to say about the economy in this speech is the cost of living, as I made a speech in Mildura the 9th of March. You can go back and watch that speech. I'm trying to upload my speeches to Facebook because Facebook takes off live videos after 30 days, which is actually really bad. So I've been trying to upload, and they're long videos, so, it's a bit difficult. With the cost of living, everything should be capped. Essential services, that's how they reduce the cost of living. Petrol and water, gas, electricity, homeowner rates, telecommunications, everything should be capped so that, a cost of living law, so that that's directly passed on to you, the public, the consumer, as they say, in economics. And I've taught and studied a lot of economics, so I know a lot about it. Before I became a teacher, and I've been a qualified and experienced teacher for nearly 30 years now, so before that I worked in a bank. And I have also taught and studied a lot of economics as well. With the cost of food, I just want to say that all this time, with food, it's becoming more and more expensive as well. But people should really be growing their own food, and you should have grown your own food for all this time, really. It's a lot healthier as well. And what I've done for many, many years is kept a seed bank of various seeds from old fruit trees and real organic vegetables, fruit and vegetables, and you just dry them out, put them in a plastic bag, and you keep them in a big box, and then you can pull those seeds out and, label the bag, the little zip plastic bag, and label the bag, and then, just keep them in a box so that you can use real organic, healthy seeds to grow vegetables and fruit trees and fruit. That should be something that Australians should be encouraged to do in the strongest possible terms, is to grow their own food and also have a few chooks in the backyard 3 or 4 chooks, which is very easy to do, and they provide fertilizer and, eggs. Fresh eggs are very, very healthy. And we know that they're attacking the farmers. The politicians are attacking the farmers and the primary producers in lots and lots of ways. So it's really important that people grow their own food, a healthy food, and you can save a lot of money that way. That helps with the cost of living. You can save a lot of money by growing your own food and supplying your own food. You can't grow all of your own food. A lot of things, there's a few things I have to still get from the shop because I do a lot of growing my own food. But, really good way to save money is to grow your own food. All right, the other day's speech I made about chapter 6 of my book is I finished with the man who made wrote an article. He's an American man, and he identifies as transgender, called The Population Control. Was the article I wrote about a very interesting analysis published by trans-identified biological man Autumn Asphodel in May 2018, called The Transgender Population Control Agenda, gives a very good insight into the government eugenics nature of gender ideology. So I ended it on that article in the last video, but I didn't finish it. So I'm just going to read the second half of that article, and then I'm going to go on to other issues for chapter 6, which mostly talk about self-ID. Also, I'm going to talk about top surgery, some of the studies that I found, which is women girls have their breast cut off. That's the surgeons doing it, and which I think is criminal to do that to humans, especially women. Also, some of the politicians in Australia who tried to get parliamentary inquiries into, gender ideology, the mutilation and butchery that they're doing, and the impact on children in the schools, and they tried to get inquiries. I'll go through that. And what else? There's a few other things that I've tagged there, which I'll just go through. Okay, so with this article about population control, the man is saying that there is a specific reason, the finishing off of the article, there is a specific reason why the number of those who identify as transgender, non-binary and other various genders have been increasing. Some say more people are LGBTQI+ because it's easier and more accepting to come out and get treatment these days. Sort of Dr. Mengele type treatment, isn't it? Surely that is a component, but there is a great deal missing from this assumption. One hypothesis is this form of population control by natural and man-made means, but the other being due to social exposure. Children exposed to transgender things before they are able to understand their own gender and sexuality results in confusion within that child. Also, let's not forget all the attention and exposure trans youth receive, further increasing the chances that a child who wants attention, who perhaps feels neglected, will identify differently to get attention. Parents are then forced to comply with their child's demands. Some parents even promoting and glamorizing their child for publicity and money. Let's not forget the hormones and procedures used to treat transgender individuals are dangerous, unnatural, and don't always solve the problem. Taking hormones and getting surgeries to alter the characteristics that defines an individual is risky and severely impacts one's mental health, which is brain health. There's really no such thing as mental health. It's actually called brain health. And I prove that in chapter 5 of my book. I'm going to do a whole big speech on that another time. That defines an individual is risky and severely impacts one's brain health, which is one reason why there are high suicide rates in the transgender community. Bullying and lack of acceptance makes up a large part of suicide rates as well. We must not forget that some individuals, no amount of hormones and surgery will make them feel right. There are people who express continued dissatisfaction after transitioning and surgery, or experience other physical and or mental problems as a result. People, they call those people like detransitioners. I've written a bit about that process in my book. To chase a dream of being biologically the opposite sex is implausible, yet this doesn't stop many from attempting it. Happiness can only be accomplished by accepting the reality that no amount of changes, hormonal or surgery, will make one biologically the opposite sex. Happiness comes from within and not how you physically present yourself. Both hormones and surgeries can result in permanent changes to the body, and for children this is even more troubling. This is his article. There are health risks associated with hormones. Female to male individuals taking testosterone risk liver damage, blood clots, heart attack and stroke. And the same holds true for male to female individuals taking estradiol. They can be more or less safe depending on the form it's taken, such as injections or oral pills. Furthermore, women, including trans women, that's biological men, taking oral estrogen may have increased risk of blood clots and heart issues. This includes birth control. They can even lower your vitamin B levels, specifically B12. Since pharmaceutical drugs are usually the only way of treating transgender individuals, there are risks and side effects from the active ingredients used to transition, but also the build-up of toxins in the inactive ingredients, such as the dyes in pills and other typical pharmaceutical side effects. The laws made to protect transgender people are mostly for politicians to gain power and money that have no knowledge or understanding what it's like being transgender. As the trans and gender variant population is rising and laws are being passed to limit typical human speech that isn't intended as discriminatory, the future that will come will result in the merger of all into one. Merging male and female to create a hybrid gender of non-binary, or much more likely the lack of gender, agender, which is to prepare for a transhumanist future. Every living entity on this planet being merged with technology to hybridize humans to create a future. We will see the intended outcome unfold in generations to come. Merging male and female so neither exist or are relevant ultimately to lead towards a gender-neutral society where neither male or female are a thing. All right, then I talked about Laura Bowley's speech, which is on my YouTube channel. Also, all these speeches I'm giving for the next 10 months for this campaign are on my YouTube channel. So if Facebook takes them off and I can't get them back on Facebook, they're all going to be on YouTube. And so just go to my YouTube channel, subscribe, and you can watch any other speeches or re-watch speeches, etc. Okay, I will talk now about, I went through the surgeries, some of the surgeries in the last speech, part 1 speech. This is part 2 speech. And I've got to go back, I think, yeah. I had a few conversations with some women on the gender critical Facebook site, and a lady who had top surgery, which is bilateral mastectomy, bilateral mastectomy. So I did the vaginoplasty surgery. I read out details about that, which is when the man has his penis changed to a vulva, a vagina, fake vagina. So what they call top surgery, you see how they give these surgeons, it's really disgusting. They give all these colloquial names, like trying to, trivialize what they do, like top surgery, bottom surgery, which is really disgusting to do that. They're very serious, dangerous and risky surgeries. And compared them pretty much with Dr. Mengele, because if you look at the details of the surgeries, which I have in my book, about 40 pages of these surgeries, they really are gruesome. And the gender surgeons, it should be banned in the law, and also, the gender surgeons, they should be locked up in a prison for a couple of years with the politicians that are doing this, because it's really sinister. So I wrote a bit about top surgery. Here, I'll just read this out. Top surgery, TS, is gender-affirming surgery, chest masculinization surgery for transgender men and non-binary individuals, which is biological women, to remove breast mammary tissue and create a masculine chest. It's a massive attack on women as a group. Chest masculinization surgery does not normally involve removal of all mammary tissue, since doing so would result in a sunken-looking chest. It differs to surgery for breast reduction and a mastectomy performed to prevent or treat cancer. aka female to male top surgery. The procedure involves breast removal, bilateral mastectomy, or also known as subcutaneous mastectomy, male chest contouring, free nipple grafts, or nipple areola resizing and repositioning. This is from medical sources. I quoted medical sources and literature in all these surgery details, gender surgery details. TS is the most commonly performed gender surgery for trans masculine people, which is biological women. It's the most commonly performed gender surgery globally, and often the only surgical step taken. Different techniques include buttonhole, double incision, inverted T or T anchor, keyhole, periareola. Procedures take 2 to 4 hours, not very long. Usually overnight, a short hospital stay, general anaesthetic, surgical drains, and compressive dressing are used. Complications are rare but can include infection, hematoma, which is blood pools, seroma, fluid, which is fluid collections, nipple areola complex and nipple graft complications, contour irregularities, skin flap and incisional complications, and scarring. The surgery does not obviate the risk of breast cancer development, as residential breast tissue remains. In other words, they can still get breast cancer. One rare academic study of 22 trans men, now this study is just incredible when you listen to this. One rare academic study of 22 trans men, which is biological women, so 22 of them studied, ages 24 to 50 years, experiencing pregnancy, birth and infant feeding, all referred to their upper front torso as chest, largely avoiding the terms breast, breastfeeding, mum, mother. Two respectively referred to breasts much earlier in their lives after transition. 20 used male pronouns. 2 neutral pronouns, both he and she. Chest in this study includes the nipples, surrounding skin, mammary tissue and fatty tissue. Out of the 22 women, 16 chose to chest feed, which is what they call it, what we call it breastfeeding, for some period of time. 4 did not chest feed, did not attempt chest feeding. 2 had not reached the point of infant feeding. 9 of the 22 had chest masculinization surgery before their conceiving their babies. 6 had the surgery after their children were born. 5 desired the surgery in the future. 2 did not want the surgery at all. That means 13 out of 16 who chose to chest feed or breastfeed still had fully functioning breasts. Participants used a range of terminology to discuss feeding their babies from their chest. 6 used the term breastfeeding. 4 spoke of nursing. 3 preferred to say chest feeding. 2 used both breastfeeding and nursing. 2 said it didn't matter. 1 used feeding and nursing. 1 used feeding and mammal feeding. In this study, chest feeding refers to trans, masculine or gender non-conforming individuals, this is biological women, and the act of feeding a baby or child at the chest with or without a supplementing tube. They use a supplementing tube sometimes to help with the breastfeeding. 9 participants had taken testosterone before they conceived. 8 took it for the first time after their children were born. 5 had never taken it. Out of the 9 women who had top surgery, now this is incredible, listen to this. You know, this gives hope to detransitioners, women who've had their breasts cut off for gender purposes. This gives a lot of hope. So listen very carefully if you're listening anywhere in the world and that's you. Out of the 9 women who had top surgery prior to their first pregnancies, 5 reported they knew at surgery time they wanted to have children. 4 said they had not considered pregnancy or lactation at the time of surgery. No participants discussed future infant feeding choices with their surgeons prior to surgery. No surgeon brought up the topic. There are more interesting aspects to this study worth further reading, including their other studies, including their other attitudes to breastfeeding, perceived surgeons thinking on gender identity, pregnancy, breastfeeding, lactation and delay, jeopardization of surgery, regrowth of breast tissue during pregnancy, use of breast binding before pregnancy, experiences of gender dysphoria, which is fake, I proved in my first speech, and this book. This is created subjectively made up by a psychiatrist in 1974. Experiences of gender dysphoria throughout health services, family advice and discussions. For instance, and this is the incredible thing, listen to this, 6 out of the 9 women who had top surgery before pregnancy reported that their breast tissue grew back during pregnancy to some extent, some amount. I'll read that again. 6 out of the 9 women who had top surgery before pregnancy reported that their breast tissue grew back during pregnancy some amount or even to pre-surgery size. This is remarkable and proves the human body will naturally biologically endeavour to find a way to create and sustain life. Testosterone can decrease the mother's breastfeeding milk supply. NHS. Sources: topsurgery.net, postoperative care and common issues after masculinizing chest surgery, transcare, csf.edu, transmasculine experiences with lactation, chest feeding and gender identity, a qualitative study, NLM, PubMed Central, ncbi.nlm.nih.gov, chest feeding if you're trans or non-binary, nhs.uk. So remarkably, some of these women, because of the pregnancy, 6 out of 9 women, which is, roughly 70%, they had the breast cut off before the pregnancy, they got pregnant, and during the pregnancy, the breast grew back, the breast tissue grew back to some extent and sometimes almost a pre-surgery size, which proves that it happens like that because they don't remove all the breast tissue. Most of the surgeons, one lady was telling me she didn't think that applied to her in the UK, but I said you go to the doctors again and get them to test your breast tissue. They can do testing. So the whole process of pregnancy, the body is enlarging the breast because there's still breast tissue residual remaining. There's still breast tissue. If they remove all the breast tissue, what the surgeons are saying is that there's a sunken breast look, or, that's why they don't remove it all. They remove the visual part, but not underneath. And that's coming through in the surgical gender literature. So I would suggest if you've had your breast cut off for gender purposes, go and get pregnant if you can. Get pregnant, and you'll probably see that your breasts grow back to an extent, and even possibly to pre-surgery, near pre-surgery size. Okay, that's according to this study. All right, now what else? Got lots to go, probably about an hour after this video, because it's the biggest chapter in my book. It's 185 pages. There's 12 chapters in my book. If you haven't ordered my book, just email me or phone me, get the book. I haven't checked my email, for about 4 or 5 days, so I have to do that. And tomorrow, or actually this afternoon, I'm going to do that Monday. So I'll get back to people. And, all right. Just a few things. Also, there's studies, so many studies, medical studies are included in this chapter. Death results. In 2016, a retrospective Danish study of 104 deceased sex reassigned surgery people, SRS people, from 1978 to 2010, so 104 deceased transgender people or sex reassigned surgery people. The study's called Long-Term Follow-Up of People Undergoing Sex Reassignment Surgery. Somatic morbidity, which is death, and cause of death. ncbi.nlm.nih.gov. Showed 19.2% were registered with somatic morbidity, that's body disease. A lot of the medical terms that they talked about, I inserted the description, explanation of what they were, what it is, what the words are. Were registered with somatic morbidity, body disease, before SRS, so 19.2%. And 23.1% after sex reassignment surgery. So it increased their somatic morbidity, body disease. In total, 8.6% had somatic morbidity before and after sex reassignment surgery. The most common diagnostic category was cardiovascular disease, affecting 18 people, 9 before and 14 after SRS. 5 of the 14 had cardiovascular disease before and after SRS. 10 people died after SRS at an average age of 53.5 years old, so not very old. Of 98% of all transsexuals in the study, 1 in 3 had somatic morbidity and 1 in 10 had died. So what it's saying really is after the sex reassignment surgery, 10% died. So you could say that roughly up to 10% that the surgeons killed 10% of their victims. They say patient, but it's not, it's just a human being. There's nothing wrong with these people because it's all the brain. It's all in the brain and the heart. So they need excellent counselling, good, compassionate, moral counselling, not surgery and drugs. So there's studies saying that 1 in 10 died after the surgery. So the surgery potentially killed 10% of the victims in this study. No significant differences in somatic morbidity or mortality were found between male to female and female to male people. Despite the young average age of death and relatively larger number of people with somatic morbidity, the present study design does not determine the causal relationships between specific types of hormonal or surgical treatment received, somatic morbidity and mortality. Okay, so just a lot more about the surgical aspects of these surgeries. Chest feeding, men chest feeding, I went through that in the first video. Alright, I've got some sticky notes here. A little bit about detransition rates. Detransition rates for trans people are at about 2% globally. It's not very high, yet these people's lives are destroyed forever. Out of roughly 25 million trans people globally, which I looked at the statistics continent by continent and what the laws were saying in each continent as well, and it came up with a figure about 25 million. That's globally. Out of 25 million trans people globally, 2% is 500,000 people. 500,000 people will detransition. That's at the time of publication, which is July 2024. They will have to endure the bitterness of the abuse done to them by adults, often as children. They need every support, compassion and encouragement society can provide. It's really a crime against humanity for people experiencing this detransition process. I anticipate the detransition number will increase. Impacts on society, I read a little bit about that the other day, part 1. Okay, oppressive language. Oppressive language of agenda ideology specifically mostly affects women and girl children. Also parents and men as well. This is bad for boys and men as well. Very oppressive, dehumanising language eradication and corruption is impacting women, children and society. The words woman, mother, female and even man, and father, parent have been attacked, degraded, corrupted in government and organisation literature, government staff people's oral and written words under the direct influence of gender trans ideology. Forcing children and society to use wrong pronouns for themselves and people, because it's you force them to use another word pronoun that's not their biological sex, then that's a lie. You know, it's a lie and it's wrong. Wrong pronouns for themselves and people. They're trying to erase the words woman, mother, and associated terms. It's outrageous, nasty, and sinister. Derogatory offensive terms such as she, her, or he, him, and vice versa. They, them, for singular. Her penis, cisgender, cis woman, cis man, gender instead of sex. Cervix havers, people with a cervix, menstruators, bleeder, woman, womb carrier, people with vaginas, bodies with vaginas, uterus havers, vulva owners, vulva havers, non-males, non-man, non-men, childbearer, pregnant people, pregnant parents, pregnant persons, pregnant families, pregnant patients, breeders, non-pregnant people, non-pregnant persons, service users, embryo carriers, gestational parents, gestational carriers, gestators, postnatal people, postpartum individuals, childbearing person, expectant persons, parent people, birth givers, birthers, birth persons, birth people, birthing persons, birthing bodies, birthing families, birthing parents, birthing people, labourers, labouring person, co-parent, second biological parent people, caregivers, families, body feeding, chest feeders, lactators, lactating parents, lactating families, lactating individuals, chest feeding instead of breastfeeding, human milk, chest milk, parents' milk instead of breast milk, human milk feeders, human milk feeding from the body, breastfeeding parents, chest feeding parents, chest tissue, chests, glands, lactating tissue, mammary glands, mammary tissue instead of breasts, parental and perinatal care instead of maternal, and maternity care, dyad, lactating dyad, parent-infant dyad instead of mother-infant dyad, carrier screening, parent-to-parent, peer-to-peer instead of mother-to-mother, non-birthing person, sperm donor, spare parent. What a nightmare. Have I missed anything I wrote? Now, there are lots of other terms since publishing this literature, which I went through as many as I could find across the literature, and I found probably, there's another 20 that I've found since this time, which I don't have a list with me now. But I'm sure you can write in the comments any other terms, degrading terms, for the word mother, or the word woman. Just use the word mother, father, woman, man, child, girl, boy. In linguistics, language death occurs when language loses its last native speaker. By extension, language extinction is when the language is no longer known, including by second language speakers when it becomes known as an extinct language. It's so serious what they're doing, eradicating and corrupting women's language, because language death can be considered as a genocidal factor. There's research on this language eradication issue. Its impact on women and children, as more than half the world's population, definitely warrants further investigation and research. Then I'll go through some articles, one in the UK, her penis, the most Orwellian phrase of our age. Yeah. And then I went through a lot of women speaking out, Kelly J. Keane. I did an 8-page analysis of her public work, basically considered her to be one of the greatest women's rights leaders in the world. And many, many, many other people. Megyn Kelly in the United States, her public commentary on this. So many people. And hang on, what's this one? Here we go. Men and women's sports. Men and women's sports. Well, I just read a little bit about what I wrote about that. As a qualified and experienced physical and health education teacher for 28 years, it's nearly 30 years now, I know it's imperative to ban biological boys and men from participating in girls' and women's sports. Ban at community, school and elite levels. As well as common sense, there's many obvious biological differences. Power, speed, agility, strength, lung capacity, muscular bone size, height, weight, metabolism, cardiovascular performance between men and women to justify it. Anyone who tries to claim otherwise is lying. There's virtually nothing to debate. Boys and men have a greater biological and athletic advantage in sports, in many cases a massive greater advantage. Sports has its own inherent risks, hardballs, bats, sticks, physical contact, injuries, etc. It's why rules and equipment are imposed to make participating as safe as possible. So forcing biological girls and women to compete with biological boys and men adds significantly to any risks, making it dangerous. Not only is it dangerous, it's incredibly unfair, selfish, harmful to women and girls. They're cheats and cowards. It's also fraud. The men participating and the men governing, it's not just the participants, it's the men governing these sporting bodies. The men governing every girls' and women's sporting organisation allowing it should be prosecuted for fraud and stealing. Such men are also stealing women's sports scholarships, sponsorship, prize money, trophies and records. They really want to destroy women's and girls' sports. It's erasure. I think it's criminal. There's also the sociological argument that girls and women need their own sporting category to thrive socially, pursue and develop their sporting gifts and talents, develop interpersonal skills, teamwork, discipline, physical and health, fitness, strength, determination, commitment, organisational skills, leadership skills, achievement and other great life skills and values. Outrageously, William Thomas, a biological man, in 2024 sued legally to be able to compete in women's swimming at the Olympics, and he got defeated with that lawsuit, I'm pretty sure. Talked about lots and lots of different athletes in here. You know, Riley Gaines, talked about the Olympics. Outrageously, the OIC in Paris 2024 Olympics permitted men to participate in women's events, 152 total women events, other than bans, restrictions in rowing, boxing, weightlifting, athletics, cycling, swimming, rugby, cricket, triathlon, tennis, archery, badminton. If the IOC and other sports or governing bodies, mostly men directors and managers and coaches as well, continue this assault on women's girls' sport, they will significantly destroy women's girls' community college and school and elite sports. They're using very limited sports medicine, a few other medical studies to claim trans women, biological men have various physical disadvantages in lung function, jump height, strength, lean body mass, muscle area, mostly from hormone use. We know gender hormone drugs do destroy the body, yet what many sports directors are doing is they're erroneously using it to allow men in women's sports to destroy it. So I talked about some weightlifting people, athletes, swimming, companies that promote, you know, men and women's sports, go woke, go broke type promotions, and various people. Lots of literature about that. Surfing, swimmers, golfers. You know, Harley Davidson, his name is James Scott Davidson, and in the USA, golf. But Mr. Trump has given executive orders to stop a lot of that, but I think there's still some competitions there. They're just allowing it still. They should be charged and prosecuted for fraud if they do that. And some women athletes and others have stupidly, irresponsibly published their support for biological men in women's sports. They are traitors to the world's girls, women and women's sport. just various people have done that, a few. Like politicians' speeches in the United States, written about a lot of Republican women before the election, many speeches from Alabama, Arizona, Arkansas, Florida, Idaho, Ohio, Indiana, Iowa, Kansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, Mississippi, Missouri, Montana, Nebraska, North Carolina, North Dakota, Oklahoma, South Dakota, Tennessee, Texas, Utah, West Virginia. Those politicians, women, they all made speeches against it and laws that they brought in. And people like Beth Van Dyne and Debbie Lisco, Arizona. Michelle Fishback, Minnesota. Lisa McLean, Michigan. Marinette Miller Meeks, Iowa. Nancy Mace, South Carolina. Donald Trump. And many other people. Many amazing women globally are publicly speaking out against the injustices, abuses of gender ideologies, negative impacts on women and children as a group. A presentation of USA Women, September 2023, Psychological War on Women, US chemistry student Alicia Krolchik, NCAA 12-time All-American swimmer Riley Gaines, UPenn graduate swimmer Paula Scanlon, 31-time All-American swimmer Kylie Allens, Master National Championship cyclist Holly Lavessa, social psychologist, teacher and author Dr. Pamela Peresky, author and social psychologist Dr. Dina McMillan. They gave a lot of speeches. That was before the election, US election. And a lot of speeches are quoted, these great women and their speeches and what they've been publicly speaking out against, trying to get it abolished. Swimmer, author, women's ambassador Riley Gaines, also forced to compete against Thomas in the 200-metre freestyle final at the 2022 NCAA Women's Championships, gave evidence at several Senate Judiciary Committee hearings. 21st of June 2023. World Boxing comments, evidence about what they did there. And J.K. Rowling quotes from her what she has been said and suffered over the years. Just absolutely shocking, the abuse that she puts up with. And many women put up with so much abuse. Speaking out about these issues, you know, it's just disgusting, including myself. And, Governor of Arkansas, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, made some excellent speeches for women's rights and women's language to protect it in the law. Candace Owens, although she doesn't really speak much for women's rights, and I was a bit critical of her. Dr. Michelle Cretella, an American pediatrician, conservative professional and peer reviewer of the Journal of American Physicians and Surgeons. She was a board director for the American College of Pediatricians. She spoke out about it in a big way. And endocrinologist Dr. Michael Laidlaw, Rockland, California, gives evidence regarding the propaganda nature of this rubbish, 12th of April 2019. Miriam Grossman is an American psychiatrist, child psychiatrist. She speaks out publicly against this in many ways, many times. And lots of people, different media people. Dr. Jennifer Bowens, director of the Center for Family Studies at Family Research Council, also gave important evidence at the 28th of July 2023 political hearing, a Senate hearing regarding the negative psychological impacts of the gender affirmation model. I'm a licensed therapist, clinical researcher, currently serving as the director of CFSFRC based on over 25 years of experience as a clinician, providing trauma therapy to children. As a researcher investigating the psychological effects of trauma stress, I'm here to express my concern about what is being termed gender-affirming care. I've considered it a privilege to practice research and train future clinicians, be a part of a discipline aimed at protecting and bringing healing to the most vulnerable in our society, which are children. So lots and lots of people around the world, media people, Andrew Doyle, GB News, stop lying and report the truth. Why do the media keep calling male rapists women? A shocking story appeared in the BBC News website yesterday. It was about one Naomi O'Brien of Tameside, Wales, which is actually Wales, who was jailed for directing a Welshman to abuse a 4-year-old child. Now, the headline reads, predatory woman who incited man to abuse child jailed, a child 4 years of age, jailed. What the article doesn't tell you is that Naomi O'Brien is a man. Throughout the article, he is referred to with she, her pronouns. You have to use the evidence of your own eyes to get the truth. And we've been here many, many times before. Look at this horrific article from the BBC in March 2022. Pensioner arrested after dismembered body found. The article begins with these lurid details. A pensioner has been arrested on suspicion of killing and dismembering a 60-year-old woman she met online. An adult female torso was found in a bag inside a shopping trolley near 83-year-old Harvey Marcelin's, a.k.a. Marcelin Harvey, apartment in Brooklyn, New York. She has now been charged with second-degree murder and concealment of a human corpse. Marcelin had previously spent more than 50 years in prison for killing 2 female friends. Some of you might sense something is amiss here. There are very few female serial killers, even fewer who target other women. It just doesn't sound like a woman's crime, does it? And that's because it isn't. You have to read to the very bottom of this BBC article before the writer mentions that the killer had only quite recently identified as a woman. That's just an absolute criminal use of media, journalistic work, isn't it, to do that? They should be bloody locked up for a few weeks, those type of journalists. So he goes on with the article, and I quoted the whole article. Many, many articles around the world. So, published research, the work other people did, because it's all evidence, isn't it? It's all evidence, and you put it together. Good researchers like me, they put all this evidence together, and it tells a story. It tells a bigger picture, a much bigger picture about what's actually happening. You just can't get that in a video, but you can get that in a book, because it's got so much research evidence and real-life evidence that it gets put together. The writer puts it together and makes an analysis and forms a conclusion about the... and then is able to give advice about solutions and answers, which basically is the politicians doing it should be jailed and banned, their parties, and abolish it in the law. That's what has to. That's the answer. That's what has to happen. Force them to resign. Force these politicians to resign, because if they don't get arrested and jailed, force them to resign, or try to vote them out. But a lot of voting systems in around the world, not just Australia, they don't work properly. They're not working. A lot of it's rigged, and I proved that in my book as well. Some media reports from Australia in 2016, Channel 7 Sunrise, and they've interviewed me in the past, published a broadcast regarding adults gender transitioning children in New South Wales. Students across New South Wales schools that are transitioning their gender. The youngest, that preschooler you mentioned, who was just 4 years old. That particular case was brought up at a budget estimates hearing delving into the Safe Schools program, which does provide support for cases like this. Now, speaking of cases, the number of referrals for gender services at the Westmead Children's Hospital in Western Sydney has tripled, and with some children as young as 3 getting assistance from the Gender Dysphoria Unit. Now, the New South Wales Education Department will provide ongoing support to that 4-year-old as they transition their gender, but some psychologists are questioning whether 4 is just too young. What an abomination. Now, my words. What an abomination these adults are. How disgusting. My heart breaks and my soul aches as I sit here typing with tears streaming down my face. I wrote a bit about the work of Rachel Wong, former founder and CEO of Women's Forum Australia, and I met her in Sydney at a speech by Dr. Joanna Howe, and I was giving a speech around the corner before. I didn't even know they were there, and I said, I'm Teresa Van Leesha, and I posted her a copy of my book, this brilliant book. you know, political persecution of women and children, 556 pages, 12 chapters. No one in the world's even written a book like this. Anyway, she goes, oh, what book? And I was insulted by that. She owes me an apology. Sal Grover owes me an apology as well. And then I said, big blue books about women's rights and, children's rights, and I wrote about her in chapter 6 and her good work. And she goes, oh, yeah, okay, yeah, I think I remember the book now. I haven't read it yet. And it's just, no one, if you get a book like this in the mail, of course you're going to remember the book, right? So I was a bit insulted by that. Anyway, some of these people get a lot of media coverage and they don't say the right thing. The media is playing games with people. The media in Australia, they all know who I am. If they interview me on lots of these issues, a lot of these issues in Australia will stop. And this is where the corruption of censorship comes. And I can see when people are getting interviewed and they're not giving the correct answers to make it stop. And the media is just playing games with people. And that's deliberate because they've got a political connection and an agenda. And people often have an agenda politically. So they're just going around in circles and going around in circles, and then it doesn't stop, does it? You can't stop evil in this world unless you've got the right solutions and answers, okay? And that's why my book is very important, and my public work is important, speeches, and I should be the Governor-General of Australia by the will of the people and by God Almighty, so I can stop a lot of these abuses because you've got the power of the Constitution and you've got the power of the Commonwealth law, and all the executive powers in the Constitution, all these that position controls the military and the federal police and everything. So this is where the media plays games with people. They interview a lot of people about this, but they just don't give the right answers in terms of. It's not their fault. I'm not blaming her. I'm just saying that the media is just going around in circles with this, and that's deliberate. Okay, because they're not blaming the political people. They're not saying the politicians have to be removed or forced to resign because of this and other issues. They're not saying that, okay? They're not saying vote for other parties and all this. They're deliberately not saying that, the media people. So then they go just round and round in circles. All right, I've talked about some politicians who tried to get inquiries in Australia into the gender-affirming butchery. Just an inquiry, okay? And these other politicians, Labor and the Greens, who are just scum, and they blocked these inquiries, and Liberal, not much better either, so don't, think I'm in favour of them. There are a few good Liberal politicians, but, these Labor and Greens mostly, and a few independent types, they, and I think a few of the Liberal people did, they blocked these inquiries that these particular politicians tried to get in the federal and state parliaments. So not only do they put this evil shit in the law to harm society, women, children, parents and men and everybody, they harm everybody with this. They don't want you to talk about it. They won't even have an inquiry. Now, if you've got any sort of issue and the politicians are saying, oh, we're not going to talk about it, we're not going to have an inquiry, that's just red flag warning right there. If they're not going to talk about issues or allow parliamentary inquiries about any issue, they are just tyrants and criminals of the worst kind. They are trying to cover up their own crimes by doing that, by saying, we are not going to allow other politicians to have a parliamentary inquiry, we're not going to allow the public to discuss it, we're not going to change the law, because they don't want to offend people or whatever. But they are doing criminal things and then censoring people. This is just evil to do this, obviously, isn't it? Because if you've got nothing to hide, if you're doing nothing wrong, you're going to talk about it or you're going to have some sort of inquiry. It's because they know that they're doing the wrong thing. So I went through various politicians who tried to get inquiries. Okay. Maura Deeming, Victoria, she's got my book, and I spoke a little bit with her on, Facebook, but really, I've spoken to other politicians in person, they've got my book and on the phone, but she should give me a call out of courtesy and have a chat and say, we're going to really talk about your book publicly and all this evidence and serious issues. She tried to get an inquiry, and I praised her in my book. and said that she was an excellent politician, Christian and teacher, 10 years. So, John Pizzuto harmed her and he was removed, luckily. She had a big court case and she won that, so that's very good. And she tried just to get an inquiry, right? And what happened is 21 votes to 16 votes voted against her inquiry. That was the Victorians' upper house. So I said, well, all those 21 politicians who voted against it, they should all be jailed. Because they proved that they supported doing it and they stopped an important inquiry, So I praised her in my book. And also, who else? And the work of Rachel Wong, I praised her in my book as well. After I just said what I said about her. Anyway. South Australian politician, upper house, MLC, Frank Pangello, he tried to get an inquiry and in South Australia, and he's got a party. What's his party's name? Hang on, I've got this written down somewhere. I've got his party's name anyway. Peter Malinauskas, who's in the town I'm in, I'm going to give him my book later. Frank Pangello, SA Best, publicly blamed Labor politicians for failing to ensure his political inquiry into gender-affirming butchery, article 7th of February 2024. Shibu Thomas, MLC Frank Pangello blames SA Premier for killing off his anti-trans motion, starobserver.com.au. South Australian MLC Frank Pangello blamed Premier Peter Malinauskas for killing off his anti-trans motion in Parliament. Pangello proposed a motion seeking a parliamentary inquiry into gender-affirming care and what he called the explosion of gender dysphoria in our society. Malinauskas refused Labor members a conscience vote, even as the conservative organisation Family Voice Australia claimed that many Labor members were ready to support Pangello's motion. The Premier told me this inquiry, this debate, has no place in our state parliament because it would turn into a shit show of culture wars, to use his own words. Pangello posted on social media. Earlier, Queensland Senator Pauline Hanson and expelled Liberal politician Maura Deeming had failed to get similar inquiries passed in the federal and state Victorian Parliament, respectively. You can read the rest of that article. We know the very politicians who are legislating funding their gender crimes against humanity practices are also blocking parliamentary inquiries into it. It's like asking Hitler to investigate his own practices. Really, they need to publicly discuss the criminality of what those politicians are doing, prosecution, jail time for it, along with many other crimes towards the population. Gender Clinic News, GCN, Bernard Lane published an article 17th of November 2023, Stop the Scandal. On the 15th of November, Frank Pangello of the SA Best Party, a former journalist with experience in investigation, put the case to a select committee inquiry, and he quoted the December Royal Australian and New Zealand College of Psychiatrists published, being trans or gender diverse does not represent... oh no, that's what I wrote. But he was talking about how the National Association of Practising Psychiatrists wrote into the Federal Health Minister Greg Hunt requesting a parliamentary inquiry into the treatment of gender dysphoria in Australia, to date ignored. In their words, not mine, the current approach to the treatment of gender dysphoria in children and adolescents under the age of 18 has become a controversial subject within the medical community, Mr. Pangello also quoted from the new book by the group Parents with Inconvenient Truths About Trans. Bernard Lane seems rather clueless regarding the massive harm psychiatrists have done in Australia since 1811, which I proved in my book, Chapter 7. Chapter 5. I'm going to go through a lot of the evidence there of that, what they've been killing people with psychiatric drugs and practices since 1811. That's a big problem. In December 2023, the Royal Australian and New Zealand... In December 2023, the Royal Australian New Zealand College of Psychiatrists published, this is what I put in, Being trans or gender diverse does not represent a mental health condition. This position is supported by the WPATH, the UN, the WHO, worldwide, yet they're transitioning children and adults, erroneously calling it gender-affirming care. More on this later. The Queensland Government suspended child psychiatrist Gillian Spencer for objecting to gender-affirming care affirmation model. So most psychiatrists, medical boards, politicians are supporting this gender transmutilation and drugging. No surprises for me there. So she's one of the few in Australia, and there's a few others, but that she's speaking against it. She got deregistered, which is really bad. You know, I think that psychiatry should be banned, but people like her perhaps practice as a psychologist, non-drugging counselling. So
power off.
So
The Bluetooth device is ready to pair.
So I consider
the Bluetooth device is connected successfully.
I charged this before. It's supposed to be 5 hours. It's supposed to be 5-hour battery.
The Bluetooth device is ready to pair. The Bluetooth device is connected successfully.
So anyway, for the record, I just want to say that I consider Gillian Spencer to be one of the good ones, okay? And regarding South Australian public schools, I've got this one here. I've got another one in order. I've got to pick it up from the post office. I've got another microphone I've got to pick up from the post office, but the battery needs recharging and all that. It's supposed to be 5-hour battery, it's just not right. It's not. They make things today, they make things today and they just lie about the product, don't they? They don't make quality stuff like they used to 50 years ago. Regarding South Australian public schools, federal politician Alex Antic publicly said in our Parliament 9th of February 2023, it's become apparent that sending your child to a South Australian public school might be the worst thing you could ever do to them. Now, we all know that the education system has been thoroughly captured by progressives and those who benefit from big state ideology. But every now and then, it's helpful to be reminded with a concrete example of how insane some of this stuff has become. It's come to my attention that a public school in Adelaide has developed a point system rewarding students for their woke actions, and I've got the document to prove it. Under this woke social credit system, Under 5 points are awarded to a student who is seen to be, and I quote, apologising and correcting themselves or someone else for using incorrect pronouns or challenging racial and sexual or homophobic language or actions, and even authentically using an acknowledgement of country before a presentation in class. Now remember, it's got to be authentic. None of these self-hearted welcomes to country for these schools, which, I don't really have a problem with that, but I don't want to talk about that now. For these schools, now in public schools, students spend around 6 hours a day with an activist curriculum which coaches them into gender dysphoria, hatred of white people, excessive self-awareness about their so-called privilege. Now, if your child in South Australia decides they want to switch genders thanks to a video they saw on TikTok, the school may even encourage them to pursue the path of puberty blockers against your wishes. That's the South Australian Department of Education's own documents. And to top it off, this particular school penalises non-compliance with this social credit system. It's clear our public education system no longer educates children, but brainwashes them in the hope of shaping them into activists. The Marxists are moving into the next stage of their craven operation. They're doubling down on capturing our children and developing the next generation of child woke soldiers. The extent of the brainwashing in schools is, this is my words, the extent of the brainwashing in schools is sinister and insidious. It's terrible. Antic and half a dozen other politicians similar to him speak out publicly against gender trans issues and other issues, yet he knows gender trans is politically legislated and funded. He has at least 5 federal politicians in his own party who support it, as well as other parties and independents. It's his job to criticise other politicians for funding and legislating it. That's why and how it's in schools and society. Yet he's blaming the teachers, staff, and some Marxist woke concept when he must blame politicians, as I said. So it's all talk around in circles. The media does the same. All adults doing this in schools are to blame, yet they're allowed to do it. They're allowed to do it, even forced to a large degree, because it's politically legislated and funded. It's in government policies, they'll lose their jobs, so he's blaming the wrong people. Antic also, to a large degree, censors the public on his social media. I don't like that. The problem with most of these politicians who speak out about a range of issues, they largely fail to blame other politicians. They never talk about how criminal it is, what they're doing, so they go around in circles, and it keeps going and going and going. There's no consequence for politicians, no prosecutions, no jail time. A few resign, yet that's rare as well. I talked about Australian psychologist Rowling Stokes, who gave an excellent speech in Western Australia. I put that on my YouTube channel, so have a look at that. And what she said about what's going on in the schools today is just horrifying. Hi, how you going?
How are you?
Good.
You haven't seen a grey cat around, have you?
A grey cat?
Grey cat.
I
He's got
haven't.
a white shirt.
No, I haven't. I'm sorry. Yeah, you lost your cat, obviously.
He took off last night.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. Oh.
He was so settled. I just don't know, and he seems to have gone for miles. He's an old cat.
Yeah. I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
I'll keep an eye out. But
Thank you.
You're going to put a
I'll
note
come
up?
back in later today and stay.
Are you travelling? Where are you going to? Are you off somewhere now? Are you going to hang? You're staying in?
I'm going to hang around for a few days.
Yeah.
Get him back.
Yeah.
But
Have you got a card or anything where I can contact you if I find the cat?
I'll give you a phone number.
Just write it down if you.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm giving a speech at the moment for the
Set up
public.
here.
Yeah, I'm just giving a speech for the public at the moment. So, where's my pen?
Oh, sorry, are you doing a broadcast?
Yeah.
Are you? Sorry.
No, that's all right. Have you got a pen? Have you got one? Because I have got one somewhere. Where's my pen? I don't know where my pen is. I usually have a number of pens lying around. Okay, I'm just gonna, sorry about this, the lady's lost a cat, and just asking me about the cat. Okay, we'll pray for the cat. We'll pray that they find the cat. A couple travelling around. So, have you got a bit of paper? Oh, hang on a minute.
Blue note here.
Sorry. Oh, got stuff here. Just write it on this.
I'm Marilyn.
Teresa Malinauskas. Yeah.
I did Teresa's sister.
What's that?
My
Your sister's Teresa. Oh, how lovely. That's good.
Anywhere on there?
Yes, just write the name details. Actually, can you write it on the back? Is that okay? Just if there's a spot on the back.
On the back there?
Yeah, at the bottom. Yeah, oh, sorry, here. This is better. Just write it on that. I can't stop this because it's a live video.
Oh,
So, yeah. Yeah. Okay, other inquiries made by other politicians. I really hope you find your cat. And I've just told the public to pray that you find your cat. So, yeah. And I'll ring you straight away.
Thank you.
No worries if we find it. A grey cat around Peterborough. Alright, Federal One Nation Party leader, Senate Pauline Hanson, politician Pauline Hanson. Oh, excuse me. Got hair, face. Pauline Hanson requested a very comprehensive Senate inquiry into the use of puberty blockers for children in November 2022. It was rejected.
In June 2023, Hansen again requested a very comprehensive inquiry into gender-affirming care for children. In a 15-minute parliamentary speech and very long Twitter X 26th of June post, some of what she said. Concerned parents contact my office about this every week. There is strong evidence to back up their concerns as to how this issue is being handled in Australia. A growing chorus of experts in Australia are speaking out against it at great risk to their jobs and reputation and are revealing the harm it causes to children. A growing number of Australian parents are feeling completely powerless against it. A growing chorus of experts overseas are warning of its consequences. Countries held by the Australian left to be progressive like Sweden and Finland are restricting it. After a broad inquiry found little evidence supporting it, the United Kingdom has virtually stopped it. And I sent Mrs. Hanson my book as well about 6 months ago. The rapid increase in Australian children being prescribed puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones to treat gender dysphoria deserves a comprehensive inquiry by this Parliament. Last year, a Freedom of Information request revealed the alarming increase in this phenomenon. It revealed a tenfold increase in Australian children enrolled in public adolescent gender clinics from 2014 to 2021. It revealed more than a sevenfold increase in adolescents receiving cross-sex hormone treatments over the same period. Of great concern, it revealed a more than 100-fold increase in children prescribed puberty blockers. These were only public figures. The number is certainly much higher when children being treated by GPs and public clinics are included. This controversy has been raised recently by Queensland paediatrician Dr. Dylan Wilson, who has called for an immediate halt to these treatments by Queensland Children's Gender Service. He called for an independent investigation into the process of diagnosis and treatment at the clinic. In a letter to the CEO of Children's Health Queensland, Dr. Wilson noticed the evolution of the treatment of gender-questioning children over the last 3 years has been exponential. He said, despite these developments, the service continues to operate in the same manner. It has always done with little or no regard for the evolution of information in the area of clinical practice. In doing so, the service was conducting poor quality medicine lacking evidence base that causing harm to children. A leading paediatrician is saying these treatments are harming children. It's not an idealist, a politician or a media commentator. He's an expert on children's health. He said there's no evidence of benefit for the use of puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones for gender-questioning children. There never has been. So, Senator Hanson hang on a minute. Senator Hanson, I also, I'll just say that, yeah, sorry, I'll just, something else. Senator Hanson tried to get two federal inquiries in the federal Senate. She tried twice. She just tried and tried, and they rejected it. So every politician who voted against it should be put in prison and charged with child abuse and crimes against humanity. And I'll go a very, very long speech that Senator Hanson gave. I quoted most of it. Okay, and she's the second inquiry. Hang on a minute. Where have I got the second inquiry? I definitely put that in my book. She's got a second inquiry. In August 2023, Hanson's federal Senate inquiry requested was defeated 38 politicians' votes to 25. Labor, Greens, 5 Liberal, David Pocock politicians voted against it. Tasmanian Senators Jackie Lambie and Tammy Terrell didn't vote on it at all. Politicians are not afraid they'll be exposed. They've already put it in the law. They want to harm people. They know exactly what they're doing because they're as evil as Hitler, pretty much. The only thing they fear is jail. They don't even fear God and Jesus, who will condemn them to hell, which is worse than jail. After rejecting her inquiry request, Hanson publicly called those politicians sick puppies. She rightfully trashed them as not representing the people who elected them. They're representing an ideology that harms children in a perverted attempt to make the human species and more, to remake the human species and more. Politicians against her inquiry are more than sick puppies, they're big-time criminals. The only way to stop their evil is to jail them. The majority of politicians have rejected every parliamentary gender butchery inquiry request across Australia. No inquiry or investigation is going to stop their evil. Only jailing them will, or forcing them to resign, and banning their political parties. Who can write referrals for gender services in clinics worldwide in Australia? General practitioners, GP doctors, endocrinologists, urologists, paediatricians, gynecologists, psychologists, teachers, principals, psychiatrists, all types of mental health professionals. Those doing it are all politically legislated funded so-called professionals doing criminal referrings and actions to children. It's more than a cult or faith, it's a death cult for the devil. Articles published for the Royal Children's Hospital, Melbourne Royal Children's Hospital. What's some of the horrific things happening there? And I think later I talked about, there was 2 inquiries that Pauline Hanson tried to get. There's another one that she tried. I must have wrote about it later. Anyway, okay, she definitely tried to get 2 inquiries, so I've got that in here somewhere. The Royal Australian New Zealand College of Psychiatrists published in December 2023. This is very interesting. The role of psychiatrists in working with trans and gender diverse people, TGD, proving they say being trans or gender diverse does not represent a mental health condition. So why are they transitioning children and adults? The RANZCP acknowledges the evidence, both scientific and historical, that the spectrum of human gender diversity has long existed in many parts of the world, civilizations and cultures, which is a load of rubbish. TGD people experience higher rates of, quote, mental illness than the general population, but I proved in my book, Chapter 5, that the mental illness is fake. And when I read that chapter to you in the speech, you might not understand that now, but when I go through that whole chapter, not the whole chapter, I don't have time, but some very critical evidence, you're going to understand that what they've been doing is a horror story, okay? And what people in society have been doing to their relatives, neighbours, friends, enemies, etc. is a horror story. TGD people experience higher rates of so-called mental illness than the general population. Stigma, discrimination, trauma, abuse and assault contribute to this mental distress. The WPATH Standards of Care, SOC version 7 and 8, 2012-2022 states being transsexual, transgender or gender non-conforming is a matter of diversity, not pathology. In May 2010, the WPATH released a statement urging the de-psychopatholization of gender nonconformity worldwide. It noted the expression of gender characteristics, including identities that are not stereotypically associated with one's assigned sex at birth, is a common and culturally diverse human phenomenon that should not be judged as inherently pathological or negative. Unfortunately, there is a stigma attached to gender nonconformity in many societies around the world, resulting in minority stress. A disorder is a description of something with which a person might struggle, not a description of the person or the person's identity. Transsexual, transgender and gender non-conforming individuals are not inherently disordered. Rather, the distress of gender dysphoria is the concern that might be diagnosable and for which various treatment options are available. But their type of treatment is just like what the Nazis did. And Dr. Mengele. The existence of a diagnosis for such dysphoria often facilitates access to health care and can guide further research into effective treatments. While gender dysphoria is still considered a mental health condition in the DSM-5 TR by the American Psychiatric Association, gender incongruence is no longer seen as pathological or a mental disorder in the World Health community. Gender incongruence is recognized as a condition in the ICD HP 11th version of the World Health Organization, WHO, Because of historical and current stigma, transgender and gender-diverse TGD people can experience distress or dysphoria that may be addressed with various gender-affirming treatment options. They're just facilitating it, but admitting that it's not a mental health condition. And contradicting themselves all the time, because it is in the psychiatric DSM-5, the last one. So why are they transitioning people? Why 95% of psychiatrists transitioning children and adults then? They're just criminals, these psychiatrists, I'm telling you. Wait till I read chapter 5, you're just going to be horrified. Worldwide, TGD people are sometimes forced by family members or religious communities to undergo conversion therapy, which they're banning in Australian law. In South Australia they did, and it's just counselling. Doesn't matter what you read about conversion therapy, it's only counselling. And counselling is always 100% excellent and positive, and should never, ever, ever, ever be banned in any law. And those politicians, again, just trying to cover up their crimes. So, WPATH strongly recommends against any use of reparative or conversion therapy. It's just counselling. They use language and manipulate language in ways that do evil things, okay? SOC 8 are guidelines rooted in the fundamental rights of TGD people that apply to all settings in which health care is provided regardless of their social or medical circumstances, including recommendations to apply SOC or TGD people incarcerated or living in other institutional settings. Due to a lack of knowledge, providers ultimately access cost barriers, previous stigmatising healthcare experiences. Many TGD people take non-prescription hormone therapy, just pharmaceutical drugs which destroy the body. On the 29th of May, a lot of these so-called doctors, they're just drug pushers. They're the biggest criminals around the pharmaceutical, psychiatric drugging of humans. It's just disgusting. It's so shocking and horrific when you look at the history and all the deaths associated with that drugging. Forced drugging, especially. On 29th of May 2019, the UN's Human Rights Office of the High Commissioner published UN experts hail to move depatholise trans identities. UN experts say the World Health Organization WHO moved to end the categorization of trans-related conditions as mental and behavioural disorders is a major step towards full respect for human rights connected to gender identity and diversity. These people are like Dr. Mengele, I'm telling you. Following last week's approval of an updated International Classification of Disease, ICD-11, by the World Health Assembly, trans-related categories have now been added to a new chapter on conditions related to sexual health. We expect that this reclassification will impact very positively the wrong perception that some forms of gender diversity are pathologies or sickness, and that it will facilitate access to better health care. So the RANZCP, the Royal Australian College of Psychiatrists, the WPATH, the WHO and the UN and the WHO all admit being trans and gender diverse is not a mental health condition. So why and how are they all transitioning children and adults? I mean, these people are hypocrites. They have no justification whatsoever to socially and medically transition any human. Gender dysphoria is a rubbish made-up word. It's not a disorder. Fisk, that psychiatrist, 1974, made it up. It's bullshit. Just made it up. And he admitted in his literature, which I quoted in the first video, that it's a sociological conception of how men and women perhaps view themselves or each other, not the body itself. Not the body itself. The man that made up the word gender dysphoria, Fisk, the psychiatrist, or something Fisk, and he made up that term, which I've got in the part 1 video and in my book. Yeah. Gender dysphoria is a subjectively made-up fraudulent concept forced by adults on children and other adults. Gender identity syndrome was made up by USA psychiatrist Norman M. Fisk in 1974. So we know it's fake rubbish. It was renamed gender identity disorder and included in the psychiatric DSM-3 in 1980. Again renamed gender dysphoria in the 2013 psychiatric DSM-5. Fisk was obsessed with Harry Benjamin and his gender colleagues' work. Fisk admitted in his literature, this is what Fisk said, quote, "The greatest source of gender dysphoria was strict social norms regarding how women and men should behave, not the body itself, The ICD-11 labels GD as gender incongruence. This is from the University of Oslo, Centre for Gender Research, Gender Dysphoria, 2019, stk.uio.no. So it's a lie, a scam, and they're physically mutilating people for it. So the man who made up the term, subjectively, which is what psychiatrists do, it's just bullshit labels, he said it's not regarding the body itself, but they're cutting up the body, they're carving up the body, they're mutilating the body, they're cutting off breasts, they're cutting off penises, they're cutting off, and, taking out vaginas and hysterectomies for gender surgeries. What the hell? And testicles and scrotum and penises. What are they doing with these body parts? Well, some of them are being used, the tissue is used to do the vaginoplasty or the phalloplasty. But what about the other body parts? What are they doing? Are they selling these body parts? Like with the abortion, when they take the baby's body parts and they sell them on the market, or organ removal like they do in China and other areas. Falun Gong, remove their body parts and they sell them on the market. How horrific is that? Forcibly removing humans' body parts is just Dr. Mengele stuff. So anyway, I continue to say about this. So why and how are they all transitioning children and adults? They have no justification whatsoever to socially and medically transition any human. Gender dysphoria is a rubbish made-up word. It's not a disorder in the brain. It's a lie in the brain. A lie in the brain, a lie in the heart, which is easily corrected by saying, no, you're a boy, man, or you're a woman, girl, woman, not the other sex. You can't change that. That's it. And compassionate counselling if they need it and want it. Ongoing compassionate counselling, non-drugging counselling is very good for everybody, excellent for everyone. And nobody should ever be threatened with being locked up or forced on drugs to receive counselling. Because counselling is always excellent and positive and good. There's always some good outcome. If you don't like the counsellor you have, just go to another counsellor. That's it. But they're not harming anyone. They're not physically harming anyone. They're not forcing drugs. They're not physically cutting up the body with any sort of surgery or any sort of pharmaceutical drug. So we should put billions into counselling for everybody who wants it. Counselling if they need it to help them love and accept themselves, accept themselves and their body. It's not rocket science, mate. Even if it was a disorder in the brain, which it isn't, but if it was, shouldn't they be correcting it, not injecting people with dangerous drugs, doing dangerous surgeries? It just makes shit up because psychiatry is pure evil. They want to drug everyone, mutilate the human body with any bullshit reason and lies. And not just them, it's other people in the so-called medical industry who are doing it, especially the surgeons. I talked about various Australian women's rights groups and individuals and other global individuals and groups and said I had various support from... I've had limited amounts of support from these women and their groups, ranging from none to be able to participate and contribute in some Zoom meetings, Women's Declaration International, WDI, but they're censoring me on my book. So they're just, covering up everything as well, just as guilty. I'm telling you, anyone who censors me and my book is guilty. And they owe me a big apology. There's a number of women in Australia who do, and internationally as well. who owe me a big apology. They owe all women an apology, and they owe the public an apology for trying to censor my brilliant book. You know, so-called left-wing women, which left and right-wing, it's all bullshit. It's all erroneous. It was made up in the French Revolution, where they said the monarchists go on the left side of the room, or one side of the room, and the Republicans go on the other side of the room. And that's it. And some idiot man from that created left-wing, right-wing bullshit. And somehow, absurdly, the politicians throughout the world have put that in their political system. I mean, it's just absurd, really. Because people all over the world have different views on everything, on all sorts of issues. You can't put people in boxes and labels like that, and this wing, that wing. We're not birds. You know, you can't just say, oh, that's left wing, right wing. That's bullshit. That's absolute rubbish. If you understand and know where some of these terms and concepts come from, you can understand that it's ridiculous. It's absurd. Okay, so anyway, I've written about a whole bunch of things, different women's rights groups and different people. Some of them have supported me and some of them have treated me badly, and they're just much to blame as well. Some people just making money out of court cases and this sort of thing, which the law, in the court, they don't change the law in the court. They have some administrative review provisions in laws, but they don't use it in Australia. But if you have a court case, even if you win, you can't change the law. Not in Australia. Politicians create the law. And this is why they're dangerous. This is why they're dangerous, and this is why it's their fault. And the judges, corrupting the judges too, because they put it in the law, and the judge is making a decision for their job. You know, if a judge makes a decision for the job, or it sides with the public, the politicians get rid of the judge. If they make good decisions for the public, they can get rid of the judge. That's why the judges often will become corrupt. And the magistrates, and they just say, oh, we have to do it because it's the law, you know, and they think they have to do it because of the law, but that's bullshit. When I worked as a teacher in the high school system for 20 years, if I didn't morally agree with anything, I didn't teach it. I said, I'm not teaching that. No, they can't do anything. They can't sack you. They can't. Not really. They can maybe now more because they're just more evil. But back then they couldn't. And the judges will say, okay, well, I'm going to lose my job if I side with the public on this. You know what I mean? And that's how the politicians corrupt the judges and the police and everything, and all these doctors and psychiatrists, and it's really bad. So they're all the same kind of people, you know, the same, like 1% of the population. And it really upsets me that they, you know, the judge can make a decision. There are lots of laws. There are lots of laws. There's criminal grounds, these men going in women's spaces and sports and all that, and even doctors doing it. There's criminal laws, you know, assault or fraud. So there's criminal laws they can apply and say, well, you know, we're not going to support this because there are criminal laws which can apply here, and that's all the judges need to say. They don't need to say side with the men doing it, like, you know, Tickle versus Gill thing. What they did was wrong, the judges, and the lawyers making money out of it. You know, trying to censor me in my brilliant book. And just making money out of bogus court cases because they didn't listen to what I said. And she owes me an apology, and all Australian women an apology. And I wrote about what they did in my book. Because, yeah, anyway, I'm not saying that. I said I'd forgive them all, but they have to apologise. I'm not just going to forgive you, because you should apologise and do the right thing. Because it affects millions and millions of people. If you censor me in my political work and my political website and my brilliant book and all my public work, you're just acting like a criminal. And millions and millions of people suffer because of it. That's what happens in this world. When you don't promote the right people and the right solutions and the answers and the right leaders, lots of bad things happen. So I just wrote a bit about the judges. People need to understand that government judges are mostly not about upholding and enforcing the law. They pick and choose what laws to apply and leave out, what evidence, what witnesses, etc. Sometimes they have policies and rules not even based in the law. They are biased, they're politically appointed, they can constantly side with government lawyers. They make decisions and rulings based on the preservation of their own job. They also their own values, whether good or bad. Politicians often get rid of judges and magistrates who rule against the government in favour of the people. And it's not fair on those judges and magistrates either, and not fair on the people. And of course, a major problem when the law is not on the side of the population or justice, it becomes evil. They censor people. I find most judges, like politicians, malicious and sadistic. And I'm sorry but that's their fault. If they treated me badly in the past, that's their fault for doing that. And there's been quite a few recently, actually, who've actually got my book and have been listening and treating me with a lot more respect that I deserve. You could have 10 lawyers in a courtroom or on your side, but if the judge wants to harm you, they'll do it. Oh, yes, and they hate strong women. With this man, Roxy Tickle, other laws can be applied. Criminal laws. What about charging him with fraud, harassment, stalking, intimidation, threats towards Miss Grover and women in her giggle app? That's what I'd do. What a nasty predator. He needs correction and counselling. Judges and lawyers could definitely have taken that approach. So it's very unwise, very foolish to censor a teacher of nearly 30 years who wrote a massive book about women's and children's rights, okay? I wrote a bit about the Women's Rights Network Australia, some of the good work they did, but some of them also treat me badly recently. Well, not recently, probably about a year ago. Anyway, I don't want to talk about it because it's a bit depressing, you know. It affects the whole population. It affects millions and millions of people because these people are foolish. They're selfish, a lot of people. They're selfish, you know. They want all the glory and the attention and all that, but it's not about that. Being a good leader, you actually suffer, you know. So it's not about the glory and attention, being a good leader. The better leader you are, actually, the more you probably suffer. And people try to get rid of you and silence you and censor you and assassinate you and all that. Okay, self-ID. Self-ID. You know, self-ID is just disgusting, isn't it? Putting in the law that men could go into women's spaces and sports and rape shelters and shit like that and prisons. You know, I've had some experiences with these things as well, which I wrote about in my book, and I'm not going to talk about it now. But I tell you what, that is just the dumbest thing to do in the law, isn't it? Imagine being a politician and creating a law where you can allow men to go into women's spaces legally. It's dangerous. It's like rape culture. It really is rape culture. Now, why are they making laws to be super tough on rapists? Lock them up. Serial rapists of women and children should get the death penalty. That's what Jesus said. No. But they'll create a law where they'll allow men to go in women's spaces and sports and rape shelters and try and breastfeed and get access to children. You know, and threaten everyone's jobs just because they're speaking out against it, where you can get fucked. Those politicians can fuck off. On behalf of the Australian people and the world's people, you politicians can fuck off. Seriously. What a degenerate person you'd have to be to make a law that says a man can go in women's spaces and make it dangerous going to the toilet. A man can go in a woman's toilet where there's children, girls, innocent, vulnerable girls and boys. You know, you've got to watch children very, very closely in this world, very closely, and men, they've got to be watched. So you're going to put a man in women's toilets and bathrooms and all that. Well, they're going to try to rape people, aren't they? It's not rocket science. And we've seen all the footage and we've seen all the reports and we've seen all the disgusting threats, rape threats and violent threats that they give publicly around the world to women and children and women speaking out against it. And I was saying, oh, we can go to the court now because it's in the law and just threaten women left, right and centre and threaten their jobs and all this. It's just evil, 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 evil. So I'm going to read out just a little bit. State politician Alex Greenwich is a homosexual man, which he is says himself, so that's just literally accurate, who brought in the worst liberal abortion law in New South Wales in 2019. Even though he is not a woman, he does not have sex with women, so it has nothing to do with abortion. He also publicly promoted New South Wales' horrible December 2023 euthanasia law. Euthanasia is state-sanctioned murder of the population, especially the vulnerable and the elderly. Labor politicians intend to bring in their own LGBTQ+ bill and ban conversion practices bill, not just New South Wales, other states. Before 8th of February, I emailed 87 New South Wales state politicians regarding Greenwich's horrible private bill and other issues, such as how politicians are killing people under their psychiatric practice, etc. I called Greenwich's office as well. I received 3 emails back, a pathetic rubbish letter from Roy Butler, politician for Barwon, with nothing for women's and children's rights. 22nd of March, this is 2023. Butler's email included a media release by Labor politician Clayton Barr, another useless male politician, chair of the Committee on the Community Services, who is discussing this bill to report by the 3rd of June. The committee is not allowing public submissions and letters, only a survey input censoring the public. We don't need useless, destructive men like this in our parliaments and the rest. They destroy women's and children's rights. 2 other emails, a much better response on the 8th of February 2024 from Robin Preston, Hawkesbury politician, deputy of the Liberal Party in the Legislative Assembly, Shadow Minister for Mental Health, Medical Research and Veterans, and an excellent response from Tanya Davis, Liberal politician for Badgerys Creek, 12th of April 2024. Robin Preston's email says, Dear Miss Van Lieshout, thank you for your correspondence and feedback on the Equality Legislation Amendment LGBTQ plus IQA plus Bill 2023 and Conversion Practices of Prohibition Bill 2023. This is where the Labor politicians and the Greens politicians and some of these independents, they're toxic. They're toxic. Because they put all this degenerate stuff in the law, you know. And if people in society choose their own way they live, that's their decision. That's nothing to do with me. I don't care. That's fine. But you can't put degenerate stuff in the law. You just can't do it. You're going to get condemned by God and Jesus. And, you know, you might want to hear that, but it's just the facts. So... Thank you for your correspondence and feedback on the Equality Legislation Amendment LGBTIQA plus Bill 2023 and Conversion Practices Prohibition Bill 2023, introduced to the New South Wales Parliament by Mr Alex Greenwich, MP, member for Sydney. No wonder in Sydney's in trouble. Well, that big mosque in Sydney, they want to do the prayer to the devil, don't they, publicly, the loudspeaker. Oh my God. We very much appreciate emails like yours, which allow us to understand the views of constituents on all issues relevant to the New South Wales Parliament and Government. Shadow Attorney General Alastair Henskins, SCMP, and the Leader of the Opposition, Mark Speakman, SCMP, have met with different groups and individuals who support and oppose these private members' bills, including a recent meeting with faith leaders. New South Wales Attorney General Michael Daly has referred the Anti-Discrimination Act 1977, the Equality Legislation Amendment LGBTIQA plus Bill 2023, seeks to amend it to the New South Wales Law Reform Commission. The New South Wales Labor government has indicated it will introduce its own legislation in respect of these matters. They probably already did it in New South Wales. I haven't even followed that up. However, no definitive timeframe has been outlined. In the last week of Parliament in 2023, Mr Greenwich moved a suspension of standing orders with the support of the Labor politicians. The suspension saved the Equality Bill from the usual lapsing of bills in the end of 2023. However, he did not do so with regards to the Conversion Practices Bill, which has now lapsed. We understand the Labor Party will bring its own Conversion Practices Bill. Degenerates. Just toxic. Oh, they don't want counselling. They don't want counselling for people who have difficulties and problems. We anticipate They're just idiots. We anticipate the Equality Bill will be debated and voted on by the end of the March sitting weeks, and we understand the Labor Conversion Practices Bill will be introduced into Parliament and dealt with mid-year. The New South Wales opposition oppose the Equality Bill in its current form. I would be happy to update you further should you like further information on this important area. Regards, Robin Preston. And part of Tanya Davies' 12th of April email. Thank you for your email and for taking the time to contact me regarding your concerns about the Equality Legislation Amendment LGBTQIA+ Bill 2023 introduced to the New South Wales Parliament by Mr Alex Greenwich, politician for Sydney. Oh, he should resign, Mr Greenwich. Should be locked up in a prison, actually, but you should resign. You know, Sydney. Sydney has fallen. I'm taking the proposed legislation seriously and have investigated what it is proposing and the potential consequences. In the last week of Parliament in 2023, Mr Greenwich moved a suspension for standing orders with support of the Labor Party. The suspension saved the Equality Bill from the usual lapsing of bills at the end of 2023. On the 13th of March 2024, the Equality Bill was referred to Committee for Inquiry and report by the 3rd of June 2024. The lapsing date of the bill was extended to the 16th of August 2024. I strongly and outright reject the Equality Bill. That's Tanya Davies. Thank you. The Equality Bill is far from equitable. It will put at risk every girl and woman, especially women and girls who are already vulnerable in spaces such as bathrooms, change rooms, refuges, school camps, etc. This bill will take away from women and girls their sex-based rights and protections. If passed in its current form, this bill will allow biological males to self-identify as female and access female spaces, services, activities and opportunities. This has far-reaching serious implications for women's safety, women's sport, our freedom of speech and accurate data collection. Unfortunately, the committee running the inquiry is not accepting written public submissions outside of the survey process. That's corrupt. That's censorship. The survey is multiple choice in format, etc., etc. My explanation can be accessed in my recent letter. That's an online petition type thing she had. And calling on the government to protect our children from extremely graphic and pornographic materials in schools and public libraries. Well, they should just be jailed for child sexual abuse. Thank you for raising your concerns with me, and that material removed, obviously. Thank you for raising your concerns with me. You're sincerely Tanya Davies. So, very good politician there. She's the, where she's a Liberal politician in New South Wales. Badgerys Creek. And I said, I know what I'd do. I have these authors charged with creating, publishing, promoting child sex abuse material. Get the police to gather it all up as evidence, and after their successful trial and imprisonment, burn it on a campfire while toasting marshmallows. Do we really want adults publishing child sexual abuse filth material in books, other literature, videos available in schools and libraries? Outrageous and evil. I mean, how stupid do you have to be to allow that, you know, in the schools and the libraries and all this in the law? And I've said, put these two women, Preston and Davies, in charge of the New South Wales Parliament. Hopefully they'll do much good for the population, for women and children. Even so, I think Liberal Labor deserve to be deregistered and banned from elections after 100 years of corruption. Parliaments full of new parties and independents would be much better in any nation. After 13 March Parliament debates, Greenwich private LGBTQI+ bill, Equality Bill, is now postponed to the Committee on Committee Services, public censored, to report by 3rd June 2024. The bill is extended to the 16th of August 2024. New South Wales Labor politicians introduced their new conversion practices ban bill 2024, 18th of March 2024, so they probably passed that. Okay, I just about had enough of that today, and there's one thing I was just finish on. I'll just finish on this bit and about the children's books. transgender children's books. This is just really shocking. I put this in the rape section, chapter 7, rape and sexual abuse of children and women globally. It's a big chapter too. I put this bit while I'm reading in the rape section because it was just so much information. I thought, oh, also some other things came up in that about the sexual abuse of children, and that was about the children's books I put in that other chapter. I'll just read that out now and finish. There are laws against child sex abuse. There are limited no laws to allow it, and there are laws to allow it. Age of consent laws, close and age exemptions laws, child marriage laws, parents' court consent, and in schools, curriculums, books, libraries, society with gender trans type laws and policies. Not just this area, but in this chapter I talked about the law and how it actually allows child sexual abuse and rape and all that to a degree. You can Google a long list of children's books that sexualise children. Edith Cowan University is currently publicly promoting one called Welcome to Sex, Your No Silly Questions Guide to Pleasure, Sexuality and Figuring It Out, aimed at children 10 plus years, authored by Melissa Kang and Yumi Steins. Both also authored Welcome to Consent for Children 11 plus years, both published by Hardy Grant Children's Publishing for 10 years old. It's published child sex abuse material. It's foul, vile, disgusting. The answer is to charge the authors and publisher with child sex abuse material, other authors of sexualised children's books, with the same, after they're convicted and jailed for 6 months or more, destroy all such children's books, force authors and publishers to put age-appropriate ratings. And some of these authors of children's books are young women and men that have grown up in this system, in the school system and society. So a lot of these two are victims of the politicians and teachers and all these disgusting people, gender surgeons, people in society forcing this in the law in the schools, in the hospitals, in the health system. Because they've been doing it for so long now that too long that they these people are just victims of this brainwashing, and they're publishing children's books, and it's just horrific. I'm ashamed of Edith Cowan University. It's where I did my undergraduate teaching degree, my first teaching degree. Other books are My Body is Growing, a guide for children ages 4 to 8. Author Dagmar Geisler, Skyhorse Publishing. Description guide for 4 to 8-year-olds to learn about their bodies and sex. You don't teach 4-year-olds about sex and 8-year-olds. Realistic descriptions of adult sex for educational purposes. That's what the book blurb says, the description of the book. No. 4 to 8-year-olds don't want sexualising, I said. My Underpants Rule, that's the book's name, for preschool nursery, author Kate and Rod Power, Kids Rule Publishing. The description refers to Rolf Harris, Jimmy Savile, Gary Glisser, and What's Under My Pants Belongs Only to Me. Rhyme, scenarios, ingraining what is appropriate and not what to do in difficult situations. Kate Power is an ex-police officer. You don't need to write books for little children for it, Kate. Society needs to hunt down pedophiles and jail them. Children need to be responsibly supervised at all times. Also, all boys and men need to be watched as well as around children in case they're child predators, sex abusers. From My Head to My Toes, 3+ years old. Author Charlotte Barkler, publisher Bright Light. Description. Discusses consent and control for a young audience. Talking about consent with 3-year-olds. Putting ideas about consent in small children's brains. No, this is morally wrong and ridiculous. Responsible good adult supervises and respects children. You don't need to teach children anything about consent until puberty, when parents and teachers teach teenagers their bodies will change, not to let anyone touch you sexually, not to have sex until you're an adult 18 years old, and keep reinforcing it. Parents hold and hug and cuddle their children. Brothers and sisters hug their siblings. Friends hug each other. This is normal. You supervise and talk to them. You don't need to use any sexual words and concepts at all in any children's books or any educational literature. It's really not justified. Until puberty, 12 to 13 years, even then puberty teaching must be biologically described. Prevention-based sex education, not sexualized. There's a very big difference between sexualized language in books and curriculum and teaching and sex education, like prevention sex education. Very big difference. Yes, no, a first conversion about consent. That's another book. Age 2 to 5 years. Authors Megan Madison, Jessica Raleigh, Isabel Roxas, publisher Rise Penguin Book Workshop. Description, concrete language and imagery to introduce the concept of consent. Normalise and celebrate the experience of asking for and being asked for permission to do something involving one's body. Talking about issues like race, gender, and our bodies from the age of 2 not only helps children understand what they see, but also increases self-awareness, self-esteem, allows them to recognise and confront things that are unfair, like discrimination and prejudice. At 2 years old, that is bullshit. These are grooming books encouraging the sexualisation of children. 2-plus-year-olds don't understand, let alone care about any of this. They just want to play with their building blocks. This is adult rubbish in children's books. Private parts are private. Another book. Ages 2 to 6 years. Author Janine Saunders. Publisher Little Big Chats. Description. Reinforces the correct anatomical names children and adults should use for the private parts and teaching children what they should do if they are touched inappropriately. For 2-year-olds. Children can't defend themselves. Okay? It's why they need responsible adults to supervise and protect them. If adults do their job, you don't need to teach 2 to 6-year-olds in children's books about their private parts. It's ridiculous. What's Happening to Me? Another book. An illustrated guide to puberty. 3 to 5 years old. Teaching about puberty at 3 to 5 years old. Author Alex Frith. Publisher Kensington. Description. Explains male puberty in a reassuring and friendly way. This is ridiculous. Tackles everything from physical and hormonal changes to emotional upheaval. You don't need to teach male puberty to 3 to 5-year-olds. Red flag. You're 9 years too early. Hang on, what did I say there? You're 9 years, 9 years too early. 9 years too early, yeah, teaching him about it. What's the big secret? Talking about sex with girls and boys. That's the name of the book. What's the big secret? Talking about sex with girls and boys, age 4 to 10 years, 4 years old. Authors Glory Cransby Brown and Mark Brown. Publisher Little Brown. Description. Makes the content of sexual anatomy, sexual development and reproduction seem like normal conversation for children and adults. Sensitive reference to masturbation and intercourse for 4 to 6-year-olds, 4 to 10-year-olds. Big groomer alert. It's perfectly normal, changing bodies, growing up, and sexual health. That's the name of this book. Ages 9 to 13. Authors Roby H. Harris, Michael Emberley, publisher Candlewick Press. Description. Acclaimed book on sex, sexuality, bodies, puberty. Newest edition. Shift to gender-neutral vocabulary through our expansion on LGBTQ plus A topics. Here we go. Gender identity, sex, sexuality, sexual safety, contraception, abortion, sexual abuse, consent, destigmatizing HIV, AIDS, benefits and pitfalls of social media and the internet. Staying safe online for 9-year-olds. 9 to 13-year-olds is too young for 95% of that. Lots of grooming there. Keep children off the internet. They only need to use it occasionally for proper education, research assignments from age 12 years. That's it. Not anything sexualized at all. Children need sport, art, music, other healthy activities. Puberty education done correctly is not sexual. It's biological, anatomical, and social personal strategies to go through it well. Another book. It's so amazing. A book about eggs, sperm, birth, babies, and families, age 6 to 12. Unbelievable. Same authors and published a description how families are created, including adoption, intercourse, birth control, chromosomes and genes, adjusting to a newborn sibling, masturbation, sex abuse, HIV and AIDS, homosexuality at 6 years of age. And others have said books about anal sex and all this sort of disgusting rubbish for children. Other than adjusting to a newborn sibling, 6 and 12-year-olds